Welcome to Wilkow. I'm your host, Andrew Wilkow. Now that we've seen the obvious benefit of tax reform, huge win for Republicans, that is more people keeping and spending more of the money they earn, the president who campaigned on and pushed for tax cuts is unfortunately sliding back into a failed late 1920s belief that protectionism works. The Ford-Macomber Act of 1922 raised the average import tax to some 40%, which of course was met with trade retaliation from foreign governments and their central banks. To make matters worse, the Smoot-Hawley tariffs of 1930 were an add-on to Ford-Macomber and raised tariffs 20% higher. And Republicans, yes, the Republicans at the time called these protectionist actions essential for the continued prosperity of the country. Even President Hoover said agricultural protectionism was, quote, the most urgent economic problem facing the nation, and put forth, quote, an adequate tariff is the foundation of farm relief, unquote. Now, this was a response to the post-World War I recovery in Europe. And many economists have rightly pointed out that Smoot-Hawley exacerbated the effects of the stock market crash of 1929. Why? To put it simply, money bought less. That's it. And markets were affected. Consumers had to pay artificially more for goods and services. And when money buys less, guess what? There's less money to spend, and the economic effects spiral down from there. Now, John Maynard Keynes, a hero of left-wing economists still to this day, wrote a piece way back in 1931 that ran in the New Republic, where, get this, he justified tariffs. Under the heading of revenue tariff for Great Britain, he argued the advantages of a tariff by saying, quote, compared with any alternative which is open to Great Britain, this measure is unique in that it would at the same time relieve the pressing problems of the budget and restore business confidence. But this is not its only advantage, insofar as it leads to the substitution of home-produced goods for goods previously imported. It will increase employment at home, and at the same time, by relieving the pressure on the balance of trade, it will provide a much-needed margin to pay for the additional imports which a policy of expansion will require, and to finance loans by London to necessitous debtor countries. A revenue tariff is a high card which we still have in our hand. Where would the budget of any other country be if it had no receipts from its tariff? Well, sounds like a magic bullet. Pixie dust. It's going to solve all the problems. Well, in what can be seen, right? Industries, for a time, enjoy price protection from foreign producers. But in the unseen, this is how economics works, in the eventual future, costs also rise as supply is limited and not on parity with demand, making consumers that much poorer. In other words, again, money buys less. So we've been down this road before. If we really want to go back in time, all the way back, we can go visit Adam Smith, who warned very early on in our history about the corrosive effects of trade wars. Adam Smith wrote in Wealth of Nations, which influenced generations of economists, quote, when there's no probability that any such repeal of a tariff in a foreign country can be procured, it seems a bad method of compensating the injury done to certain classes of our people to do another injury to ourselves, not only to those classes, but to almost all the other classes of them. When our neighbors prohibit some manufacture of ours, we generally prohibit not only the same, for that alone would seldom affect them considerably, but some other manufacturer of theirs. Now, with that said, if we had a free trade agreement, that should mean free trade. Some foreign nations do have value-added taxes imposed on products that are made in the United States, and not similar to their own domestic VAT taxes. In other words, they're taxing us more, and it acts as a tariff. Look, we can't go around ordering foreign governments to change their domestic policy, but that doesn't forbid us from negotiating tariff-free trade. I mean, setting ourselves at a disadvantage is, of course, not good. But again, nobody wins a trade war. Okay, joining me now to discuss is Veronique DeRougy, Senior Research Fellow at the Mercatus Center. Hi, Veronique.
Hi.
All right, look, here you have Donald Trump. he is proposing tariffs to protect American industry, but we've been down this road before. It was called Smoot-Hawley, and it did nothing but exacerbate the Great Depression.
That's for sure, and you don't have to go that far, actually. Listen, first we should stop calling it a tariff. We need to call it an import tax or a consumer tax, if you want, because that's exactly what it is. It is actually paid and shouldered by the consumers in the country applying the tax. And you don't have to go as far as the Great Depression to think about the devastating effect of tariffs. 2002 will do. President Bush, made the same mistake, and with pretty devastating results, to the point that a year later they had to take out the import tax.
Well, look, we all know economics. It's kind of a dismal thing, right? It's easier to say we're going to stick our fingers right in the eye of these governments that are taxing our goods. We're not going to take this anymore. We're not going to take this lying down. But you're right. Really, in the end, the consumer has to artificially pay more, and that's left out. That really, we're paying that tariff to our own government, another tax.
Yeah, so when foreign governments impose tariffs on our goods, what really they are doing, they are preventing consumers in their market to actually first buy the stuff they want, and also buy possibly cheaper things and better things. They're punishing their consumers, often in the name of protecting a few people. That's called cronyism. The way to answer this type of behavior, which, if excessive, can be problematic for us, is not to do the same to our consumers. You don't respond to cronyism with cronyism.
So what do you say when we have a free trade agreement, right? Whether it's with a European nation or an Asian nation, and on the surface, it operates like a free trade agreement. There's no tariff at the port, but there is an added tax at the point of sale, one that may not be applied to a domestically produced good. Isn't that unfair to our industry, our car companies, our motorcycle companies, our spirit and beer and wine companies? Isn't it unfair when it's not really free trade?
Listen, the only thing that is unfair is when our government, our own government, favors a few producers in our country at the expense of non-subsidized producers and consumers. What other governments do, there's very little we can do.
All right, we're all in agreement that bringing down tariffs makes us all richer. So should we stop at trying to bring down tariffs in other countries? I know we can't order or dictate domestic policy in foreign countries, but if we're going to have free trade, shouldn't we expect our trade partners to bring their tariffs down as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is absolutely the way to go. Just go and negotiate with them. Use diplomacy, use whatever you need to use to actually bring down their tariffs, because we are the ones who have the most to win. Even though we subsidize our exports a lot, and even though, for instance, on steel, we have 150 duty and tariffs on steel alone. So it's not as if we're angels, but overall they're pretty low compared to other countries. So we have everything to win from entering negotiation that will result in these countries lowering their duties, import taxes. Yeah, we should absolutely we should try.
Because here's my follow-up. And look, we're into this stuff. We read this stuff. We're kind of the nerds when it comes to this stuff. How do you tell someone in a mill town or a steel town who's been put out of work by globalization that really you should just understand you're supposed to be out of work because that's how it works? That's an unacceptable answer to so many people who feel like they're the victims of globalization. We have to be able to say to them, look, we're working on this. We want to bring down their trade barriers so the products that you make will get sold and you can get your job or keep your job.
Yes, I mean, I understand, and we should say things like this, but the reality, is that the steel employment has declined long before China and long before Asian countries and low labor cost countries were even in the play. And what has happened with manufacturing is a lot of these jobs have gone away because we've implemented labor savings innovation. And as a result, right, fewer jobs, but much higher productivity, which means much higher wages for those people who have jobs. Now, it's little comfort to those who lose jobs, but that's also the reality. We cannot make promises that these jobs are going to come back, or that they're just temporarily dislocate, displaced. They're somewhere in India and they're going to come back when they won't.
Well, look, I disagree with the tariffs, but I understand the president did run on a platform that included the forgotten man, and we can't turn around and just say, hey, sorry. He's got to address the forgotten man and the forgotten woman, and if he can bring down trade barriers in other countries and we can sell more products and those people can keep their jobs or get their jobs, I still say it's a win-win. Thank you so much, Véronique, for joining us.
It doesn't seem to be going this way. Yes.
Well,
thank you for having me.
All right, we'll have you back real soon.